The long steel-lined corridor echoed to the feeble struggles. Oh, sorry. The long steel-lined corridor echoed to the feeble struggles of the two humanoids clamped firmly under rubbery Vogon armpits. "This is great," spluttered Arthur. "This is really terrific. Let go of me, you brute." The Vogon guard dragged them on. "Don't you worry," said Ford. "I'll think of something." He didn't sound hopeful.
"Resistance is useless,"
bellowed the guard. "Just don't say things like that," stammered Ford. "How can anyone maintain a positive mental attitude if you're saying things like that?" "My God," complained Arthur. You're talking about a positive mental attitude, and you haven't even had your planet demolished today. I woke up this morning and thought I'd have a nice relaxing day, do a bit of reading, brush the dog. It's now just after 4 in the afternoon, and I'm already being thrown out of an alien spaceship 6 light years from the smoking remains of the Earth. He spluttered and gurgled as the Vogon tightened his grip. "All right," said Ford, "just stop panicking." "Who said anything about panicking?" snapped Arthur. "This is still just a culture shock. You wait till I've settled down into the situation and found my bearings. Then I will start panicking." "Arthur, you're getting hysterical. Shut up." Ford tried desperately to think, but was interrupted by the guard shouting again.
"Resistance is useless."
"And you can shut up as well," snapped Ford.
"Resistance is useless."
"Oh, give it a rest," said Ford. He twisted his head till he was looking straight into his captor's face. A thought struck him. "Do you really enjoy this sort of thing?" he asked suddenly. The Vogon stopped dead, and a look of immense stupidity seeped slowly over his face.
"Enjoy?"
he boomed.
"What do you mean?"
"What I mean," said Ford, "is, does it give you a full, satisfying life? Stomping around, shouting, pushing people out of spaceships." The Vogon stared at the low steel ceiling, and his eyebrows almost rolled over each other. His mouth slacked. Finally, he said,
"Well, the hours are good."
"They'd have to be," agreed Ford. Arthur twisted his head round to look at Ford. "Ford, what are you doing?" he asked in an amazed whisper. "Oh, just trying to take an interest in the world around me, okay?" he said. "So the hours are pretty good, then?" he resumed. The Vogon stared down at him as sluggish thoughts moiled around in the murky depths.
"Yeah, but now you mention it, most of the actual minutes are pretty lousy, except..."
He thought again, which required looking at the ceiling.
"Except some of the shouting I quite like."
He filled his lungs and bellowed,
"Resistance is..."
Sure, yes," interrupted Ford hurriedly. "You're good at that, I can tell. But if it's mostly lousy," he said, slowly giving the words time to reach their mark, "then why do you do it? What is it? The girls? The leather? The machismo? Or do you just find that coming to terms with mindless tedium of it all presents an interesting challenge?" Arthur looked backwards and forwards between them in bafflement.
I don't know. I think we just sort of do it, really. My aunt said that the spaceship guard was a good career for a young Vogon, you know. The uniform, the low-slung stun ray holster, the mindless tedium.
There you are, Arthur," said Ford with the air of someone reaching the conclusion of his argument. "I think you've got problems." Arthur rather thought he had. Apart from the unpleasant busyness with his home planet, the Vogon guard had half-throttled him already, and he didn't like the sound of being thrown into space very much. "Try and understand his problem," insisted Ford. "Here he is, poor lad, his entire life's work is stamping around, throwing people off spaceships."
"And shouting,"
added the guard. And shouting, sure," said Ford, patting the blubbery arm clamped around his neck in friendly condescension. "And he doesn't even know why he's doing it." Arthur agreed. This was very sad. He did this with a small, feeble gesture because he was too asphyxiated to speak. Deep rumblings of bemusement came from the guard.
"Well, now that you put it like that, I suppose."
"Good lad," encouraged Ford.
"But all right," went on the rumblings. "So what's the alternative?"
"Well," said Ford brightly but slowly, "stop doing it, of course. Tell them," he went on, "you're not going to do it anymore." He felt he ought to add something to that, But for the moment, the guard seemed to have his mind occupied pondering that much. Said the guard.
Well, that doesn't sound that great to me.
Ford suddenly felt the moment slipping away. Now, wait a minute, he said. That's just the start, you see, but there's more to it than that, you see. But at the moment, the guard renewed his grip and continued his original purpose of lugging his prisoners to the airlock. He was obviously quite touched.
No, I think if it's all the same to you,
He said,
I'd better get you both shoved into this airlock and then go and get on with the other bits of shouting I've got to do.
It wasn't all the same to Ford Prefect at all. Come on now. But look, he said, less slowly and less brightly. That was not the Vogon. Said Arthur without any clear inflection. But hang on, pursued Ford. There's music and art and things to tell you about. Yet,
Resistance is useless,
bellowed the guard, and then added,
You see, if I keep it up, I can eventually get promoted to senior shouting officer. And there aren't usually many vacancies for non-shouting and non-pushing people out officers, so I think I'd better stick to what I do now.
They had now reached the airlock. A large circular steel hatchway of massive strength and weight led into the inner skin of the craft. The guard operated a control and the hatchway swung smoothly open.
But thanks for taking an interest,
said the Vogon guard.
But
He flung Ford and Arthur through the hatchway into the small chamber within. Arthur lay panting for breath. Ford scrambled round and flung his shoulder uselessly against the reclosing hatchway. But listen, he shouted at the guard. There's a whole world you don't know anything about. Here, how about this? Desperately, he grabbed for the only bit of culture he knew offhand. He hummed the first bar of Beethoven's Fifth. Da-da-dum. I have no idea what Beethoven's Fifth sounds like off the top of my head. Doesn't that stir anything in you?
No,
said the guard.
Not really, but I'll mention it to my aunt.
If he said anything further after that, it was lost. The hatchway sealed itself tight, and all sound was lost, bar the faint, distant hum of the ship's engines. They were in a brightly polished, cylindrical chamber about 6 feet in diameter and 10 feet long. Ford looked round it, panting. Potentially bright lad, I thought, he said, and slumped against the curved wall. Arthur was still lying in the curve of the floor where he had fallen. He didn't look up. He just lay panting. We're trapped now, aren't we? Yes, said Ford. We're trapped. Well, didn't you think of anything? I thought you said you were going to think of something. Perhaps you thought of something I didn't notice. Oh, yes, I thought of something, said Ford. Arthur looked up expectantly. But unfortunately, continued Ford, it rather involved being on the other side of this airtight hatchway. He kicked the hatch they had just been thrown through. But it was a good idea, was it? Oh, yes, very neat. What was it? Well, I hadn't worked out the details yet. Not much point now, is there? So, what happens next? Oh, well, the hatchway in front of us will open automatically in a few moments, and we'll shoot out into deep space, I expect, and asphyxiate. If you take a lungful of air with you, you can last for up to 30 seconds, of course, said Ford. He stuck his hands behind his back, raised his eyebrows, and started to hum an old Beetlejuicean battle hymn. To Arthur's eyes, he suddenly looked very alien. So this is it, said Arthur. We're going to die. Yes, said Ford. Except, no, wait a minute. He suddenly lunged across the chamber at something beyond Arthur's line of vision. What's this switch? He cried. What? Where? Cried Arthur, twisting around. No, I was only fooling, said Ford. We're going to die after all. You know, at times like this, when I'm trapped in a Vogon airlock with a man from Beetlejuice and I'm about to die of asphyxiation in deep space, it's times like this I'd really wish to what my mother told me when I was young. Why? What did she tell you? I don't know. I just told you I didn't listen. Oh, Ford carried on humming. This is terrific, Arthur thought to himself. Nelson's column has gone. McDonald's have gone. And all that's left of me is the words mostly harmless. Any second now. Oh, all that's left is me. and the words mostly harmless. Any second now, all that will be left are the words mostly harmless. And yesterday the planet seemed to be going so well. The motor whirred. A slight hiss built into a deafening roar of rushing air as the outer hatchway opened onto an empty blackness studded with tiny, impossibly bright points of light. Ford and Arthur popped out into space like corks from a toy gun. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a wholly unremarkable book. Chapter 8. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a wholly remarkable book. It has been compiled and recompiled many times over the years and under many different editorships. It contains contributions from countless numbers of travelers and researchers. The introduction begins like this. Space, it says, is big. Really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you think it's a long way down the road to the chemist. But that's just peanuts in space. Listen, and so on. After a while, the style settles down a bit, and it begins to tell you the things you really need to know, like the fact that the fabulously beautiful planet Bethsalamine is now so worried about the cumulative erosion by 10 billion visiting tourists a year that any net imbalance between the amount you eat and the amount you excrete whilst on the planet is surgically removed from your body weight when you leave. So every time you go to the lavatory, it is vitally important to get a receipt. Let me read that again. So every time you go to the lavatory there, it is vitally important to get a receipt. To be fair, though, when confronted by the sheer enormity of the distances between the stars, better minds than the one responsible for the guide's introduction have faltered. Some invite you to consider for a moment a peanut in Reading and a small walnut in Johannesburg, and other such dizzying concepts. The simple truth is that interstellar distances will not fit into the human imagination. Even light, which travels so fast that it takes most races thousands of years to realize that it travels at all, takes time to journey between the stars. It takes 8 minutes to journey from the star Sol to the place where Earth used to be, and 4 years more to arrive at Sol's nearest stellar neighbor, Alpha Proxima. For light to reach the other side of the galaxy, for it to reach Demogran, for instance, takes rather longer, 500,000 years. The record for hitchhiking this distance is just under 5 years, but you don't get to see much on the way. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy says that if you hold a lungful of air, you can survive in the total vacuum of space for about 30 seconds. However, it does go on to say that with space being the mind-boggling size it is, the chances of getting picked up by another ship within those 30 seconds are 2 to the power of 226,7,000. The chances are 2 to the power of 276,109 to 1 against. But a totally staggering coincidence, that is also the telephone number of an Islington flat where Arthur once went to a very good party and met a very nice girl, whom he totally failed to get off with. She went off with a gatecrasher. Though the planet Earth, the Islington flat, and the telephone have all now been demolished, it is comforting to reflect that they are all in some way commemorated by the fact that 29 seconds later, Ford and Arthur were rescued.